In the heart of wild Africa, where vast, arid grasslands stretch endlessly under the scorching sun, lies a small, secluded village of the Maasai tribe. This village, encircled by thorny fences and mud huts, is home to resilient pastoralists whose lives are interwoven with their herds and poultry, their primary source of sustenance. But for many years, a shadow of fear, named Ka, a colossal python with scales as dark as the night, has haunted their slumber and threatened their every meal. Ka was no ordinary python. It was terrifyingly large, capable of swallowing a full-grown goat with surprising ease. Its rough skin was adorned with old scars, testaments to countless encounters with prey and near-death escapes. Its amber eyes, always gleaming with cunning, seemed to pierce through the deepest shadows. Ka had become a living legend in the village. Whenever a chicken's frantic squawk or a goat's desperate bleat echoed in the night, the villagers knew Ka had paid a visit. Their poultry dwindled, plump hens vanished without a trace, and sometimes, even tender young goats fell victim. The villagers tried everything. They set traps, scattered ash around their animal pens, and even lit large fires at night, hoping to drive it away. But Ka was too intelligent, too cunning. It seemed to know every path and secret of the villagers, slithering through seemingly solid fences, hiding in dense bushes like an invisible ghost. The children of the village grew up with chilling tales of Ka, and deep down, they held both fear and a strange respect for this magnificent predator. The elders sighed, accepting it as a part of nature's harsh law. However, worries still permeated every home, as food sources grew scarce, and Ka showed no signs of stopping. One full moon night, as silver light thinly coated the savannah, the villagers were deep in sleep after a long, tiring day. Unbeknownst to them, Ka was lurking. The colossal python silently glided through the tall grass, heading straight for the largest chicken coop in the village. The old thorny fence was no match for it. With immense strength, Ka easily slipped through, entering the co-op. It began its nocturnal feast slowly, swallowing plump chickens one by one. The faint clucking of the unfortunate birds only lasted for a moment before fading into silence. After consuming a few, Ka felt its belly begin to swell. It wanted to leave, but a strange scent wafting from the corner of the co-op caught its attention. It was an old, bright red blanket, lying discarded on the ground. This blanket belonged to a village child, blown out by the wind when its mother had hung it to dry earlier that day. Ka, notorious for its greed and curiosity, couldn't resist. It assumed it was a new, unusual prey, something soft and easy to swallow. The python opened its wide maw, slowly taking the bright red blanket in. The blanket, soft but much larger than the chickens, began to cause problems. Initially, Ka felt no difficulty, but as the blanket clumped in its digestive tract, it started to feel constricted. Ka, notorious for its greed and curiosity, couldn't resist. It assumed it was a new, unusual prey, something soft and easy to swallow. The python opened its wide maw, slowly taking the bright red blanket in. The blanket, soft but much larger than the chickens, began to cause problems. Initially, Ka felt no difficulty, but as the blanket clumped in its digestive tract, it started to feel constricted. An uncomfortable sensation arose, entirely different from the feeling of fullness after swallowing prey. Ka tried to slither away, but the blanket was firmly stuck. Unable to move further, it stumbled, striking its tail hard against the ground, creating a loud thud. This sound, unlike the familiar squawks or bleats, roused a few villagers from their sleep. Cautiously, they grabbed their spears and lanterns. Venturing outside, news of Ka's predicament spread quickly throughout the village. Initially, there was a sense of triumph, a sweet revenge for the losses they had endured. But then, as they witnessed the python's misery, another feeling gradually seeped in: pity. Ka, though an adversary, was also a creature of this land, a part of the harsh natural cycle they had come to accept. More importantly, no one wanted such a large python to die in their village. It could bring bad omens. The old village chief, a wise man with skin as wrinkled as ancient tree bark, made a decision. He summoned the two bravest young men in the village, those who had faced Ka in the past and understood its danger. "We must call the rescue team," he said in a deep, calm voice. "Ka is in distress, and though it has caused us much trouble, we cannot let it die in such pain. This is not just about saving an animal, but about preserving the balance of nature." One of the young men, named Juma, who owned an old vehicle often used to transport goods to the nearest town, immediately set off. The journey to the nearest ranger station was far from easy. The road was rough, rocky, and dusty, and enveloped by the darkness of night. But Juma did not waver. He knew that every minute that passed was a minute Ka endured. At the ranger station, the rangers were familiar with tales of Ka. They knew it was a fierce creature but also an important part of the ecosystem. Upon hearing that Ka was in danger, the lead ranger, a robust man named Ao, immediately assembled his team. They prepared everything necessary: a specialized transport cage, medical supplies, tranquilizer darts, and thick nets to ensure safety. Chief Ranger Ao, who had worked in conservation areas for decades, understood that approaching a colossal python in pain was incredibly dangerous. It could react violently out of fear or agony. However, their duty was to protect all creatures, even predators. When the rescue team arrived at the village, dawn was just breaking. The villagers had gathered in a large crowd, their eyes a mix of worry and curiosity, gazing towards the chicken coop. Ao and his team, which included Indala, a wildlife expert, approached Ka cautiously. The python still lay motionless, gasping for breath, its belly swollen and seemingly in constant spasms. Scratches from the blanket had caused its skin to bleed in a few places. "It seems weak," Indala whispered to Ao, "but we still need to be extremely careful. An injured python can be the most dangerous python." They used a dart gun with a tranquilizer attached to a long pole. Indala, with his years of experience, gently approached and injected the tranquilizer into Ka's muscle. The python let out a faint hiss, its colossal body twitching slightly before gradually relaxing. The tranquilizer began to take effect. Ka sank into a deeper sleep, its breathing becoming more regular but still heavy. Now came the most dangerous part: extracting the blanket. They needed to operate very carefully to avoid causing further damage to Ka's digestive tract. Ao and Indala, along with two other rangers, donned thick gloves and carefully massaged the python's belly. "I feel it," Indala said, his voice tense. "The blanket is stuck here, right in the middle of its body. It seems to have coiled into a large ball." The final decision was made to manually pull it out. This was a risky procedure, but it was the best way to ensure Ka's safety, while Ao firmly held the python's head to ensure it wouldn't suddenly wake up. Indala and another ranger began carefully pulling the blanket out. Little by little, the bright red blanket gradually emerged. It was a slow and strenuous process. The blanket was tightly coiled and covered in digestive fluids, making extraction even more difficult. Beads of sweat dripped down Indala's forehead. The villagers watched from a distance, holding their breath, observing every movement of the rescue team. Finally, with a sigh of relief, the blanket was completely pulled out. It was matted, covered in fluid, and had an unpleasant odor. Ka, although sedated, still convulsed slightly as a natural reaction after the obstruction was removed. Indala immediately checked for injuries inside Ka's mouth and digestive tract. Fortunately, despite a few minor scratches, there was no serious damage. The blanket had been swallowed without tearing any internal organs. After extracting the blanket, the rescue team transferred Ka into the large transport cage they had prepared. This required the cooperation of many villagers, who had put aside their fear to help. The cage was loaded onto the truck, and Ka was transported to the Wildlife Rescue Center at Kruger National Park. Here, Ka received special care. Veterinarians performed a comprehensive examination, administered antibiotics to prevent infection, and gave fluids for rehydration. It was placed in a separate, quiet area with appropriate temperature and humidity for recovery. Indala and Ao frequently visited, checking on its condition. Initially, Ka was still very weak and had no appetite. But after a few days, with dedicated care, it began to show signs of recovery. The wounds caused by the blanket gradually healed, and it started to eat the fresh meat portions prepared for it. With each passing day, Ka regained its strength, its movements becoming more agile. Its amber eyes once again shone brightly, and it began to display its inherent wild instincts. After about 2 weeks, Ka had fully recovered. The rangers decided it was time to release it back into the wild. They chose an area far from the village, rich in prey and with minimal human contact. The cage was opened, and Ka, with its strength and majesty restored, slowly slithered out. It surveyed the forest, then looked back at its rescuers in a strange way. That gaze no longer held hostility or despair, but instead something indescribable, seemingly an understanding. Ka slithered away, gradually disappearing into the dense foliage. The villagers, upon hearing that Ka had been released, felt a strange sense of relief. They were no longer as fearful as before. Instead, they had a story to tell their children and grandchildren. And then, something remarkable happened. Since Ka's release, the incidence of missing chickens or goats in the village significantly decreased. It wasn't that Ka had entirely abandoned its predatory habits, but its visits became much less frequent. Sometimes, villagers would still see it slithering across the dry grasslands, but Ka no longer approached the village as regularly and aggressively as before. One afternoon, Juma was tending his goats at the edge of the village when he unexpectedly saw Ka. The colossal python was basking on a rock quite a distance away. Juma was about to flee, but then he realized Ka had no intention of attacking. It just lay there, its amber eyes looking towards him, then gently lifted its head as if in greeting. Juma was no longer afraid. He understood that Ka, the python that once terrorized the village, now carried a change within itself. The story of Ka and the red blanket became a new legend in the Maasai village. It was not just a tale of a giant python, but also a testament to the unexpected power of kindness, about how humans can change, and how even the wildest creatures can sense help. It reminded them that, in this harsh natural world, sometimes, compassion can create a miracle, mending seemingly impossible relationships, and bringing peace to both humans and all living things.